7 p.m. The alarm on my phone blared, that shrill sound I'd heard every night for the past 5 years. It wasn't a wake-up alarm for work. It was a reminder that I had to stab myself with another needle again, into a body that was already falling apart. I sat on the cold toilet lid, syringe of progesterone in my hand. I lifted my shirt. It was hard to find a spot on my lower stomach that was still unbruised. It looked like a topographic map, bruises shifting from dark blue to sickly yellow. That was the price of 4 egg retrievals and 6 failed embryo transfers. "Are you done yet? I'm hungry." David's voice carried from the living room, irritation he didn't bother to hide. He never came in here with me. He hated looking at needles. He said they killed the mood. "Almost done," I said, swallowing a sob, and drove the needle into the fat under my skin. The oily medication burned as it pushed into the muscle, sharp enough to ring in my skull. I bit my lip so I wouldn't cry. I wasn't allowed to cry. David said my negative energy was why the embryos wouldn't implant. I stepped out, forcing a smile. David was on the couch watching TV, not even looking up at his wife. "The doctor said my lining looks really good this time," I said, trying to spark a little hope. "Maybe this IVF cycle will work." David exhaled, that bored, weary sigh I'd heard 1,000 times. He turned off the TV and looked at me with an iciness that made my skin prickle. "Emily, we need to talk." My heart dropped. Not money again, right? We'd burned through almost all our savings at fertility clinics. Or did he want to switch doctors? David tossed a brown envelope onto the glass coffee table. Inside wasn't a medical bill. It was divorce papers. What is this, David?" I stammered, my hands shaking as I picked up the document. "I can't do this anymore," David said, standing up. His voice was clear, ruthless, like a blade. "I want a family, Emily. A real family. Not this house that reeks of hospitals and disappointment." "But the doctor said we still have a chance. We just have to keep trying." "No, this isn't about trying," he snapped, his shout rattling the room. "It's about you. Your body is broken, Emily. For 5 years I've done everything right. I eat clean. I work out. My sperm is perfect. But your uterus, it's dead ground. It doesn't know how to hold a baby." Every word hit my face like a thrown brick. Shame surged up, thick and familiar. Yes, it was my fault. I was the woman who couldn't give him a child. "But you promised," I choked out. "I already found a replacement," David said, lowering his voice, calm in the most cruel way. "Jessica is pregnant." I froze. Jessica? His 24-year-old secretary who'd been there, 6 months? How is that even possible? David curled his mouth into a smug little smile. "That's the funniest part, Emily. Me and her only slipped up one time. No meds, no doctors, no thousands of dollars. Just one night, and boom, she got pregnant immediately. 8 weeks. He stepped closer and jabbed a finger at the papers. "You know what that proves? My seed is excellent. The only problem here is the soil. I need a wife who can give me an heir, not a hollow shell covered in needle marks like you." David walked away, leaving me alone in the empty living room. My ears rang. Jessica got pregnant after one time. I did IVF for 5 years and got nothing. The conclusion was painfully obvious. I was defective. I was the throwaway. My world collapsed under my feet. I stared down at my stomach. at those bruises that suddenly felt pointless and obscene. What had I suffered for when my husband could have a baby that easily with someone else? I crumpled to the floor and the sobs broke loose like shattering glass. I signed the divorce papers that night. I didn't have the dignity left to beg him to stay. 3 days later, I packed in silence. David had generously given me a week to move out. But I didn't want to breathe inside this emotional slaughterhouse for another minute. He was busy taking Jessica shopping for baby things. The whole world seemed to be congratulating him on his manhood. I stepped into David's home office to grab a few old books of mine. The room reeked of cigarette smoke and my husband's arrogance. Reaching up to the highest shelf, I accidentally knocked down an old metal box hidden behind stacks of tax folders. Clang! It hit the floor. The lid popped open, papers scattering everywhere. I sighed and bent to gather them. Most were old receipts, car insurance contracts. Then my hand stopped. A wrinkled sheet with the letterhead of the National Andrology and Infertility Institute. The date: May 12th, 2018. 5 years ago, right before we started our tear-soaked IVF journey. I remembered that day clearly. David told me he'd gone in for a general checkup and the doctor said he was healthy as a bull. He came home, looked at me with pity, and said, "The problem is you, Emily. We have to fix you." But the black words on this page told a different story, a horrifying story. I narrowed my eyes, reading carefully, my heart pounding like it wanted out of my chest. Semen analysis results. Patient, David Miller. Count, very low, severe oligospermia. Motility, 1%, virtually immotile. Morphology, 99% abnormal. Teratozospermia, pinhead, short tail, multiple heads. Doctor's conclusion: patient has severe male factor infertility. Natural conception is impossible. Intrauterine insemination, IUI, will not be effective. The only option is IVF with ICE-SI, intracytoplasmic sperm injection, but success rates remain low due to poor genetic quality. I dropped onto the cold floor, the paper trembling in my hands. Not me. Never me. 5 years. Thousands of hormone injections that made me gain weight, lose hair, swing from rage to tears. 4 egg retrievals that hurt down to the bone, without full anesthesia because they said it might affect the eggs. 6 failed transfers that pushed me into depression, convinced I was a woman who couldn't give birth. All of it was because of him. David had known, from day one. But his sick, fragile ego couldn't stand admitting he was the weak one. He would rather watch me destroy my body with chemicals, watch me cry myself dry every time my period came, than confess the truth. He was infertile. He'd manipulated me for half a decade. He let doctors prescribe drug after drug to me, while he was the one who needed treatment. He even dared to spit at my uterus as cold when his sperm were the dead cells. The grief evaporated. In its place, a wildfire of rage lit up inside me. Heat rushed to my face. "Fine, David," I whispered, voice raw but steady. "You want a divorce because I can't carry your child? You want to brag that you got your young secretary pregnant naturally?" Wait. I looked again at the doctor's words. Natural conception is impossible. If his condition was that severe, 99% abnormal 5 years ago, it couldn't magically turn into Superman fertility overnight with Jessica. Medicine doesn't work like that. So, where did the baby in Jessica's belly come from? A cold, twisted smile formed on my lips. I pulled out my phone. Click, click, click. I photographed the report, every page, every number, crisp and clear. Then I folded the paper carefully, slipped it into my bag, and put the empty box back where it belonged. I stood, brushed dust off my skirt. I wasn't the weak Emily anymore, the wife sobbing because she couldn't become a mother. I was holding a nuclear weapon that could blow up David's perfect little life, but I wasn't going to detonate it yet. Oh no, that would be too easy. He wanted to play happy family? I'd let him play. I'd let that pride grow and grow until it was heavy enough to crush him. I rolled my suitcase out the door, chin lifted. The game had only just begun. A month later, I sat across from David and Jessica in family court. The air stank of bleach and fake smiles. David walked in like a conqueror. Armani suit, hand wrapped possessively around Jessica's waist. Jessica, who used to be his timid assistant, now looked like a newly crowned queen. She wore a tight cream sweater dress, deliberately pushing her body forward to show off a belly that was only barely rounding at 3 months. They sat opposite me. David glanced over, contempt mixed with pity. "You look rough, Emily," he said, voice dripping with superiority. "I hope you're using the money I gave you for therapy. You need to accept reality." David's lawyer slid a stack of papers toward me. "This is the property agreement. My client is being very generous. He's leaving you the car and 2 years of support. In exchange, you sign and disappear from their lives immediately." I picked up the pen. Before I could speak, Jessica cut in, sweet as poisoned honey. "Emily, David and I really want you to be happy. I know you feel ashamed. A woman who can't fulfill her role. It's painful. But don't worry. David says this baby is a boy. The Miller line finally has an heir." As she spoke, she rubbed her still flat belly and shot David a flirtatious look. David beamed, stroking her hand. "That's right. My genes are strong. They were just held back before." Held back? I almost laughed. My fingers tightened around the phone in my purse, the one holding the photo of his 99% abnormal, impossible semen analysis. Right then, I could have pulled it out. Slammed the truth in his face in the middle of court. I could have shouted, "Your genes weren't held back, David. They've been dead for years. That baby in her belly isn't yours." I pictured his smug face collapsing, Jessica turning white, the courtroom erupting. It would have been delicious. But then I watched David bend down and kiss Jessica's hair, eyes shining with stupid pride in his legacy. If I exposed it now, he would suffer. Yes. But he would divorce Jessica immediately. He would play the victim, the poor man who'd been tricked. He would dump the responsibility of raising someone else's child. He'd still have his money, still have time to hunt for another victim or quietly try to fix himself. No, too easy. David's greatest enemy was his ego and his obsession with an heir. The cruelest revenge wasn't destroying his dream today. It was letting him build his whole life around a lie, letting him raise that child, love that child, pour his fortune into that child, brag about him to the world. And then, when he was at the peak of satisfaction, I would rip the floor out from under him. I inhaled slowly, swallowing the rage. I relaxed my face and gave a small, gentle smile, so calm it made David pause. "Thank you for your generosity," I said evenly. "I'm not contesting anything. I just want this to be over." I signed the divorce papers. One clean stroke. Emily Miller. The last time I would ever use that last name. David's lawyer visibly relaxed. David smirked. Smart choice. I'm glad you finally know your place. I stood and slid the documents back. I looked David in the eyes, then let my gaze drop to Jessica's belly, the home of a secret so huge she was probably terrified I'd expose it. But she didn't know I had his medical file. She only thought I was a broken ex-wife. David, I said, low and steady. You've always wanted a legacy. Congratulations. I'm sure this child will be the clearest mirror of exactly what you deserve. David frowned, feeling something off in my words, but arrogance drowned out his instincts. Of course. He's my son. And Jessica. I turned to her with a polite, unreadable smile. Good luck. You're going to need it. I walked out of the courtroom. My heels clicked against the marble, loud and proud. No more limping woman injected full of hormones. The courthouse doors closed behind me, sealing off that fake happy family performance. I stepped into bright sunlight. I was free. And more importantly, I was holding the detonator to a timed bomb. The countdown had begun. Tick, tock. See you in 2 years, David. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. I sat in a cushioned chair on my front porch, soaking in soft California morning light. In my hands wasn't a syringe, it was a warm cup of ginger tea. And most importantly, in my arms were 2 sleeping little angels, Leo and Mia. My twins, 1 boy, 1 girl. Life has a twisted sense of humor. After the divorce, I met Michael, a gentle architect who loved me for my scars, not my reproductive system. When I confessed that I was hard to get pregnant, Michael just laughed. Then we'll raise dogs, or travel the world. I'm marrying you, Emily, not your uterus. That release of pressure created the miracle. 3 months after our wedding, I started feeling strange. I went to the doctor expecting another bad headline. Instead, the doctor stared at the ultrasound and grinned. Congratulations, Emily. 2 heartbeats. Very healthy. I cried in the exam room. Not from pain, from relief. My body had never been broken. My eggs had never been low quality. My uterus had never been cold. It was all a lie. And the moment I escaped David, the poison, I got pregnant naturally, easily, almost absurdly. I set my tea down and reached for my phone. Today was special. Not only was it Leo and Mia's 1-month milestone, it was also the 2nd birthday of David's son. I opened the burner Facebook account I used to keep an eye on my ex. David's newest post popped up. A photo from an extravagant birthday party. Happy 2nd birthday, Junior. Daddy's pride. Hawk legacy. Ha, chak, my son. But look at that picture closely. David looked like he'd aged 10 years. Hair thinner. Dark circles under his eyes. A forced smile, like he was performing for an audience. Raising a toddler and pampering a spoiled young wife had clearly drained him dry. And there was Jessica, still wearing heavy makeup and diamonds, but her eyes wouldn't meet the camera. I zoomed in on the child, Junior. He was adorable, but something punched me in the face immediately. David has black hair and dark brown eyes, that unmistakable Italian heritage look. Jessica has chestnut hair and brown eyes. But Junior? He had corn silk blonde hair and bright blue eyes. I laughed out loud, enough that Michael leaned out from the kitchen. What is it? Nothing, I said, still staring at the screen. I just found the last piece of the puzzle. Basic genetics. 2 brown-eyed parents can still have a blue-eyed child if both carry the recessive gene, but it's uncommon. Add the vivid blonde hair. And most importantly, add the semen analysis that said, natural conception is impossible. And there was only one conclusion. That child was not David's. I remembered Jessica's line in court. We slipped up once and I got pregnant right away. Oh, so she slipped up with someone else, some healthy young guy, and at the exact moment David was desperate for a baby, she turned him into the biggest sucker in town. And David, with his giant ego, swallowed it whole because he was starving to prove he was a real man. He would rather believe in a miracle than believe in science. Poor David, I murmured, with zero pity. You've been raising someone else's kid for 2 years. You're about to lose everything. I stood and walked into my office. On the desk sat a large FedEx envelope. I'd already prepared what I needed. A wedding announcement card and photos of my beautiful twins, living proof I was perfectly fine. A certified copy of David's 2018 semen analysis. A yellow sticky note. I picked up the pen and wrote the final line. Time to send Junior a birthday present. I sealed the envelope. A deep satisfaction ran down my spine. This wasn't just revenge. This was fate handing out punishment. At the Miller Mansion, Junior's second birthday party was at full volume. David had invited relatives and business partners, eager to show off his heir. He raised a glass of champagne, face flushed with alcohol and pride. "Thank you all for coming," David boomed. "Junior is proof of the Miller bloodline, a true warrior." Right then, the doorbell rang. A FedEx driver walked in with a large package labeled "Priority, Hand Delivery to David Miller." "Oh, that must be a gift from a business partner," David laughed, taking it. He tore the wrapping open right in the middle of the living room in front of dozens of guests. Inside wasn't an expensive toy or rare liquor. The first thing that fell out was an elegant foil-stamped card. On it was a photo of my happy family, me, Michael, and my chubby, smiling twins, Leo and Mia. The bold line on the card hit David like a slap. Emily and Michael joyfully welcomed 2 little angels. Naturally, no IVF, a complete miracle. The room went silent. Murmurs started instantly. David's barren ex-wife had twins? David's face changed. Fast. But his hands still shook as he grabbed the second item, a copy of his semen analysis from 2018. The lines I'd highlighted in red screamed, "Morphology, 99% abnormal, natural conception, impossible." And finally, a yellow sticky note placed neatly on top. "Dear David, the doctor confirmed you couldn't conceive naturally 7 years ago. Your genes have been dead for a long time. So look closely. Whose child is that blonde, blue-eyed boy?" David went rigid. Time froze. He stared at the report. Memory flooded back. He remembered how carefully he'd hidden it. He remembered how he'd lied to me. Slowly, he lifted his head and looked at Junior in the high chair, golden hair glowing under the chandelier. Then he turned to Jessica. Jessica's face had drained of all color. Her wineglass slipped from her hand. Crash. Red spilled across the white carpet like blood. The terror in Jessica's eyes was the clearest confession. "Jessica!" David growled, his voice shaking with rage and humiliation. "What is this? This report is real. Explain it. His hair is blonde. His eyes are blue. How did I never question that?" "David, calm down. Listen to me," Jessica stuttered, backing away. "Whose kid is he?" David screamed, hurling the paperwork at her. In the chaos, the child started screaming. The party turned into a tragic comedy. Guests slipped out, embarrassed. David's successful family man image shattered in public. 1 month later, the story spread fast through our small town. David forced a paternity test the next day. The result, 0% chance of paternity. The biological father? Jessica's personal trainer, a blonde, blue-eyed gym rat David had paid to help his wife get her body back. Jessica was thrown out with nothing for violating the marriage contract. David filed for divorce again, but this time he wasn't the winner. He became the town's joke, the man raising another man's child, the guy who bragged about bloodlines while being severely infertile. I heard David completely unraveled. Depression. Drinking all day. He lost his wife, lost his son, lost his reputation. And worst of all, he finally understood the brutal truth. Emily, the ex-wife he discarded, was the only woman who truly loved him and endured him, even with his defect. But he pushed her away with his own hands, so she could have children with someone else. I closed my laptop, done reading the latest update about my ex-husband. Michael was on the grass playing with Leo and Mia. Their bright laughter filled the air. That was the sound of real happiness. Not staged, not shiny, not fake. David spent his whole life obsessed with something he called legacy. He wanted to leave his mark on the world. In the end, the only legacy he left was a cautionary tale about arrogance, lies, and the price of disrespecting women. I smiled and walked out into the yard, leaving the past behind me. I didn't need revenge anymore. My full, beautiful life was the most brutal revenge of all.